Oh, wow. Emerald Fennell's latest boundary-breaking movie, Saltburn. An absolute masterpiece, in my opinion. I've seen it 3 times now. But what irked me were some of the reviews online. They did not seem to hit the same note that the movie may have hit for some of the rest of us. So what I'd like to do here is look at Saltburn through the lens of dysfunctional family systems. Oh yeah, we're going to try this angle out, and this may be more relatable to some than to others, and that is fine. But if you do have a hunch that you could relate to this, let me ask you, did you feel this movie in a very particular way that was familiar? Did that cat and family household, that texture of the dynamic, did that feel like quote unquote home to you? Because some of it sure as hell did to me, and holy smokes, did this pull out some dark twisted things that I thought I had suppressed down in such a far reaching crevice that I didn't even know I had anymore. And this movie is also obviously unhinged in many different other ways. So we're going to be at liberty to get a little weird and strange ourselves. We'll make some extreme analogies just to drive some points home, and then to tie it all back, what I'd like to do is read something called the laundry list. Now this is an excerpt from some of the 12-step programs, and what it has is a list of symptoms of what it would be like to grow up in a dysfunctional household. Now we'll tie this back to the characters, and this will help illuminate the dysfunction that we're talking about. But first, let's get into the movie. And a fair warning, warning, spoilers are ahead. But with that said, let's get introduced to Oliver Quick, who in the beginning of the movie seems to arrive at Oxford. Now, this is a beautiful place. I was definitely a bit jealous, but we learn that Oliver is a studious young lad. He looks the part. He's read his whole summer book list. His professor was taken aback to him and said, "You read the King James Bible? My lord." And Oliver is a bit of an outcast. He has trouble finding his friends and kind of making friends, and eventually does run into another outcast, a genius of some sorts, and they become friends for a little while. Only until Oliver sets his eyes on Felix. Now, Felix is this giant stud of a guy, almost like a planet with its own gravitational pull, women fawning all over him, people flopping around and trying to be near him. And he's this stereotypical macho guy, like the cool kid on campus, right? And Oliver's intrigued by this. From afar, he has a little twinkle in his eye as he's observing Felix. And eventually they do cross paths. He finds Felix on campus one day with what seems to be a flat tire, kind of moping around. "Oi, bruv, I don't know, innit? I've got a flat tire, I don't know what to do from here." And then Oliver makes a proposal and says, "Take my bike." "No, I'm not doing anything, really. I'm just returning these books. You can have my bike, and don't mind me. I shall see you later." Now, note that this is a very selfless act. It's very kind, but it's strange to give a seemingly just random guy, a stranger, your bike. Like, how? Why? You don't know this guy. Huh? Now, of course, they do meet up again later, and the next part of their Oxford time, or that first semester, is somewhat of a highlight reel. One of those videos that your iPhone spits out at you once a year with your recent albums and makes a collage of all the pictures together, right? And it's Oliver and Felix buddying up. They're becoming thick as thieves. Is that the saying? Anyways, Oliver is partying. He's starting to smoke cigarettes, drinking out of the bottle. He's starting to dress different. And they have this wholesome bromance going on. It's fun. They become buddies. And then there's a scene where he runs into his old friend, the genius one. It's a bit awkward because he dropped him for the cool kid group. And his friend confronts Oliver and says something to the effect of, "Oliver, you've changed. You're dressing different now. You do know that once Felix is done with you, he will drop you, right?" Oliver is a bit startled and doesn't really want to engage with this, and it's kind of awkward, right? He tries to disengage, but his friend, or ex-friend, old friend, gets one last jab at him and calls him a bootlicker. And this is the first hunch of the movie as to where it may go. I really hoped it didn't go this route, but of course they did. Now fast forward to the end of the semester, and we find Oliver and Felix sitting on a bridge, and Oliver's kind of down and about, and he confides into Felix and says, I can't go home this summer. I don't want to go home this summer. And Felix is under the impression that Oliver comes from a broken household. And this is where Felix extends the invitation to Oliver to come spend the summer at his house with his family at Saltburn. Now we're going to bring in Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, as this is Oliver's call to adventure. And if you're not familiar with Joseph Campbell, I highly recommend looking into his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces. And this is basically where he breaks down the diagram of the hero's journey. Many stories are told with this as the scaffolding and structure. It's a transformational arc, really. And so the doors open to Saltburn. Oliver is introduced to the estate's butler, Duncan, then gets a tour of Saltburn, and it's this beautiful, grand, overwhelmingly large, majestic place. Finally, we see his bedroom where he will be staying for the summer, and then Felix says, once you're settled in, you can find me and my family in the library. Of course, they have a library in this place. So he shuffles his way down through the hallways again, and then runs into this eerie little toy. It's the Cat and Family Players box with little puppets in it. Also a twisted signifier as to what this movie could be about. Oh. Then he's walking further down the hallways, and he can hear these echoes of chatter coming from the library until he catches somebody in the corner of his eye, and it's Venetia sitting in her room fiddling with a pen. She's eyeing Oliver up and down and then gives this little devilish laugh. It reminded me of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first movie, where Elizabeth Swann was hiding in the closet to not be seen by the pirates until an eye pops in front of the keyhole and it says, "Hello, puppet." It's as if Venetia saw straight through Oliver down to his core. Now he awkwardly says hello and then quickly makes his way to the family in the library. And as he gets closer, the chatter becomes a little bit more crispier and clearer, and he can hear that they're talking about him. They're talking about his own personal business. It's being gossiped and shared, and stuff that he probably shared in confidence with Felix is openly being talked about. Now, of course, as soon as he enters the room, they all shut up about it. There's denial, some gaslighting. Of course not. We weren't talking about you. Don't be silly. No, everybody shut up. Please take a seat here, Oliver. You look beautiful. Come right here. Now he meets the family and also Pamela. Pamela, who is the family's current plaything. And as you look at her, you can kind of get this little stressed feeling about her. Like she's not comfortable, really. And Elspeth now takes an interest in Oliver and is so interested in the details, and nothing shocks her. And tell me everything about your poor mother, and you must be so... you must be going through it, and how horrible for you. And then she has a turnabout with Pamela and quickly shoos her off to go fetch some tea. And as she leaves the room, they start talking about her behind her back. And it's this cold, strange interaction that really highlights what the dynamic is in this family already from the get-go, right? Like, there's no personal space. There are no boundaries, really, when it comes to things you'd like to have shared. There's sense of enmeshment already. After Oliver's first family black tie dinner, he spots Venetia outside of his bedroom window, sitting outside smoking a cigarette. He goes out to meet her and has nothing on but his underwear and a blanket wrapped around him. After some small talk, he says, "You must be cold. Here, take my blanket," in a similar fashion as he did earlier with Felix in offering his bike. Mind you, without being asked, right? Like it's a seemingly selfless act. She takes the blanket and says, "I am not cold, though. I am cold-blooded. We all are. Haven't you noticed?" Now, Oliver is stuck, really. He says, "No, your family treats me so kindly." She says, "Sweet," but he can't get it out. He's stuck. And this is a lioness meeting an unassuming gazelle, licking its fur on the prairie. Predator meeting prey. And it's important because she explicitly basically says, we are cold-blooded. And you could tell in the dinner earlier where they tried to push Pamela out, not by directly communicating something to the effect of, hey, Pamela, we kind of feel like you've overstayed your welcome. Do you mind getting an apartment over the next 2 months and then you can stay here up to then? No, they hide behind a mask, and there's a whisper-thin power dynamic being played. It's emotional blackmail. Nobody's direct. Everybody is playing a strange game. You can't really pinpoint your finger on what's going on, but you feel the ick of what is happening, right? Now, I do feel like something is thawing out in Oliver at this point. Behind his stuckness, he can probably tell what's going on and is now thinking, oh crap. Am I willing to play this game, or will I continue to give the clothes off my back to people please? Will I concede and kneel to everybody around me just to please and keep the peace and not, who knows, get exiled or abandoned, right? Or pushed out or lead into confrontation? Like, are you willing to play this game? And I feel like he's slowly realizing this. And that's why the following scene was one of my favorites. It's our boy Ollie saddling up to grow a pair. And it all starts with runny eggs. That's the morning after. Ollie ordered 2 eggs sunny side up, something like that. But they come back a little too runny. Now, he easily could have said nothing, right, and just eaten them. But he sends them back, and you can tell the atmosphere shift in the room. There's tension. They're looking at him. Boy, is this chap ungrateful or what? But he hangs in the pocket, and it's like watching a newborn giraffe trying to use its legs for the first time. And he's incessantly apologizing, saying, sorry, so sorry. And he seems to feel guilty about it. Guilty about sending 2 eggs back in $1 billion estate. Right? Of course they can afford that. But it's the tension that he's stepping into that's new for him, seemingly new, right? It looks like he hasn't really set boundaries like that before. Seemingly small, but it's something new. It's a new repertoire, a new skill set that he's trying to acquire, which also shows that he's willing to play the game, but he has to find his set of teeth. That starts with saying no and setting boundaries and all that good stuff. So, a seemingly small step, but if you're from a family of dysfunction and you've had trouble setting boundaries yourself, you probably giggled at this scene, right? It's funny because we all imagined it to be some suave thing that James Bond would do when he sends back an overcooked steak in a restaurant, right? It doesn't look like that. No, it looks like this. It's messy, it's ugly, it's very unsexy, and ugh. But you can't help but root for the guy. Like, he's going through his trials and tribulations on his hero's journey here, right? Like, he's testing the waters and he's expanding himself. And slowly but surely, our boy Oliver is becoming bolder and bolder. And he puts on his big boy pants when he meets Elspeth for tea. And I don't know why they're dressed like this, but she's wearing a cocktail dress and he's wearing a tuxedo for tea with nobody else around because, of course, they have to look perfect on the outside. And she's ranting on about Venetia and how she can't keep down her food and really sharing her business and some deep self-esteem issues that she has. Can you imagine your mom telling complete strangers the issues that you have? It's wild. But there's a more significant part to this scene, and it's something that Oliver brings up. In dysfunctional families, there are a number of rules, and one big rule, is that one does not talk. One does not state the obvious. One does not put words to the emotional games that are being played, because you will get fierce denial about that reality. But he does this in a very creative way. He projects this onto Pamela, who has been driven off of the property earlier that morning just to avoid the commotion. He says, Elspeth, I'm sure you've noticed, but there was something about Pamela. Her stories, they seem inconsistent at times, and that self-pity and the emotional blackmail. And this perks up Elspeth. You can see it in her face that she's now on high alert. And says, Oliver, you're quite right. I noticed something too. There was something sinister about her, and I felt guilty too. Oh my goodness, thank God that you're so perceptive, Oliver. Now this is big because he's put words to something that we're not supposed to talk about in such a family, right? And you can see by her blank stare that she has been put on the spot, really, indirectly, and he did it in a very creative way, but it shows that he has become wiser. He's kind of seeing through the charades and the smoke and the mask as to what's really going on. Now, speaking of big boy pants, oh my lord. Night 2 that Oliver meets Phoenicia outside of his window was a very different one. Now, she's sitting there in a see-through nightgown under the shade of darkness, but this time the Oliver that walks down the steps is not the same harmless Oliver that she met a couple of nights ago. No, this Oliver has a little bit of a swagger in his step as he comes down, and he has armed himself with material to use as emotional blackmail. And what then ensues is this very subtle power struggle. Knowing that she's also somewhat of a masochist and gets off on this stuff, he uses it to dominate her. And it's an intense scene, and basically once he gets his finger in her mouth and she cocks her head back, it's showing that she submitted. He dominated her. If you imagine two wolves out in nature, once they duke it out for whatever rank they have in the hierarchy, it is won by the time that the loser shows its neck to the dominant wolf, saying, I'm showing you my neck, you can bite my neck and basically kill me, which they won't do, but it's basically a sign of tapping out and submitting. So it was a very primal scene where he cocks her neck back and still eats her out and worships her whole body because she's insecure about it. So he gives her what she wants. She's a masochist. She kind of wants to be dominated like this. And boy, is this a wild scene, but it was beautiful because this, you see Oliver is transforming into a beast of one, but he's playing the same game and by the same rules that this household is run on, right? And Farley, of course, can't keep his mouth shut. And by the time they wake up, everybody in the family seems to know that Oliver and Phoenicia got a little bit bloody the night before. It's casually mentioned at the table the next day. Felix is visibly upset. Oliver has to chase him down. Is everything okay? What's going on, man? He's like, what do you mean? What's going on, dog? It's bad form that you got with my sister. Holy smokes. Then he has to put some white lies together and kind of placate Felix. And, dog, no, please, do you believe Farley? Come on now. I wouldn't do that, dog, really. But then he slips in this very damning sentence. He says, well, someone has to entertain us all. That's why we love him. And you see him tear up a little bit as he says it. And it shows that Oliver is gradually starting to see his own MO, his behavior, and why he does the thing he does. And that he becomes everything for everybody else around him except himself. He's starting to see his people-pleasing tendencies. His desires are slowly starting to sketch in his mind. There's a rough outline showing now. And it begs the question, like, how far is one willing to go to chase these insatiable desires? What's at the other end of it? At what point do you become your own light instead of chasing breadcrumbs from the approval of others, right? Because we kind of now see that Oliver has probably very low self-worth, right? He dances for others to get love and approval. And this dancing for others, I think, really crystallizes and forms in his mind during the Henry party. When Farley said, it's time to turn things up a notch. Holy smokes, did they turn it up. Well, when they put Oliver on the spot and they gave him the mic and to sing the lyrics that came on the screen, it was basically just stated that he was a dancing puppet. You dress me, I love you. You feed me, I love you. Something to this effect. If you've seen the movie, you saw the lyrics, and that was so sinister. But you saw Oliver towards the end kind of get stuck there, and in my mind, there was a wave of understanding coming over him. It finally crystallized in his mind. He sees and is willing to now, well, basically forced to accept where he is and who he is surrounded by. Now we then catch Oliver in the bathroom as he is wrapping his hand with a piece of cloth, as he then furiously breaks the mirror. Now this is highly symbolic, and some people may say, well, this causes like years of bad superstition. It's a bad omen. I don't think that applies here. I think it symbolizes the shattering of illusions. Like mirrors can also represent illusions of false perceptions that one has of oneself or situations, and shattering a mirror may symbolize the shattering of illusions, of unveiling truth and gaining clarity. And I believe that's what's happening here. After he sang the lyrics in front of everybody around him and kind of got stuck, you saw this hit him particularly hard, like it finally crystallized in his mind, right? And he's deep on his hero's journey at this point. He's starting to face parts of his shadow that he may have repressed or that one does not want to see or is in denial about, and it's all being brought to light. He's facing it now, and he's shattered a false illusion of himself and is now forced to accept who he really is. And as you'll have it, once you do break the mirror and shatter the illusions, other things will have to come to light. Oliver will have to face a lot more. Even the little white lies that he's told and thought would slip underneath the radar, as Felix learns about Oliver's true family. And that he's not from a broken household. No, he has a loving father and mother awaiting him. They don't even know where he is, really. Now, this jeopardizes their relationship and really shows that, oh, damn, Oliver really does manipulate. He lies about things like, why would you lie about not having a father and the state of your household? That's kind of far out there. And on their way back to Saltburn, Felix basically says, you know what, this is really weird, Ollie, okay? So it's too late to cancel this party we have right now. We're going to have this party, but come tomorrow. We're going to send you off to Oxford, and I shall see you there. AKA, I will never see you again, you weirdo. Why would you lie about this? But it's, again, part of Oliver's hero's journey. He has to atone for his sins. This has to come to light, and he's not this innocent, cute little boy. No, he also does bad things. Nobody's perfect, right? And it's kind of shattering this illusion that he's this innocent good guy, right? He's not. He's lying, he's manipulating people around him, and he's going to certain extreme examples. Now, it also kind of begs the question, like, where does that leave us? If we thought Oliver is from a broken household, this kind of pulls the rug out of everything that we've been talking about. Many ways to interpret this again, but in my theory, I think it kind of balances things out, because up to this point, we've seen everything to extremes, right? All the scenarios at Saltburn, which is this massive estate, is just really pushing boundaries. It's to the extreme, and if you can relate to any of these characters in this movie, you might be like, oh my God, is this really, oh shit, oh Lord, oh no, don't tell me that this and that. And then you see his average household and where he lives, and kind of it brings it down to earth, saying like, okay, even if you do relate to this, right, and you can find yourself in some of these characters, it's all right. Everybody has this. It's human, and it's not this extreme. Okay? But Oliver is not out of the maze yet. Oh no, it's far from over. He hasn't entered the deep cave and the center yet. Poor Oliver cannot enjoy his own birthday party. It's all coming crashing down. It's mask off. It's pretty wild. People singing happy birthday to him don't even know the man's name. It's as shallow as it can be. Although they do play some pretty rad music at this party. It looks pretty sick, but poor Oliver, he is straight up not having a good time. He does, however, still try to hang on to Felix and their relationship. He wants to work things through. So he tracks down Felix, but gets rejected as Felix is disillusioned with him. He doesn't want to talk to this weirdo no more. Get off of me, he says. But that does not stop Oliver. No, he actually follows Felix and this random girl into the Saltburn maze. Now, when he gets to the entrance of the maze, we can see him wearing a white leather jacket with antlers. Now, this may symbolize a white stag, And because of its white fur, the creature is vulnerable, hindering the creature's ability to camouflage itself from would-be predators. So the coloring gives the white stag direct ties to the concept of innocence, purity, and vulnerability. And at this point, Oliver is pretty far along his hero's journey, and he's entering a stage of purification. As he moves further and further into the maze, we approach the center. Now, this is also the deepest point in the cave for the hero's journey. This is the abyss. This is where one faces their dragon, has to fight the Minotaur. And this is so where he finds Felix boning away at this girl at the base of the Minotaur statue. And of course, the Minotaur is also steeped in symbolism. I highly recommend you look into this yourself as well. But as a rough outline, the Minotaur symbolizes our primal human nature, primal human and animal nature, I would say. Our primal desires, fears, and urges, our beast-like nature. Because we, as other animals, all share a lower brainstem. These are very primal operating systems that we carry. Yes, you too, my friend, have a beast within, stuff that we'd rather not face, see, bring up, or share. We've probably pushed this down so far as to have it somewhere in a deep crevice, maybe a maze within oneself, right? And for Oliver, he now has to face his last shred of his shadow. What is still lingering for Oliver? Now, he confronts Felix here and says, my man, like, we really got to talk about this. You can't keep running from me, right? We're at the center of the maze now. Like, this is the end. I don't know where else to go. The mask is off. It's very raw. He confesses his love to Felix and says, regardless of the lies, man, it's still me. And then he also fesses up about his role. He says, everybody around you is playing a role to get close to you, and I'm sorry if my performance wasn't up to par. He really lays bare the dynamic of their friendship right now, because Felix is wearing two wings, right? And he can resemble a savior or an angel, an angelic being that takes somebody under their wing and tries to save them, that they can pity them and kind of take care of them. And Oliver wants to dance for somebody to be taken care of, to get that approval, because he cannot give it to himself yet. He doesn't have his own light. So he faces his ultimate source of approval, which is Felix. Felix represents his light. However, he now realizes that this is an insatiable desire that can no longer be met, as Felix will drop him like he has dropped other previous playthings. Right? So once he realizes this isn't doable anymore, he faces the ultimate sacrifice. He has to kill the other. To kill the other, in his mind, that is a delusion of thinking that somebody else will come and save him. And this is where, to me, the biggest line of the movie comes in, as he throws up and then Felix kind of pushes him off and tries to jokingly say, you should go get some sleep or go to bed. But Oliver turns around and says, I don't care what you think of me anymore. That's the key. This is where Oliver is now unshackled. He is unshackled, unchained from the approval of Felix. He no longer needs to dance for somebody else. He is now becoming his own light source. He no longer wants to be a moth to a flame. Chaos ensues. Now, the next scene is just frantic. People are running around like chickens with their head chopped off, because Oliver, he took out the whole light source, dog. Felix was like the little engine of this family. He was that golden boy, right? Everybody loved him and kind of kept this family running almost. He was the internal battery, as it were. But I want to focus on the lines that Oliver speaks as he's walking through the house and everybody's frantically like making their way around him. He says, you don't need to be told, do you? You're just turning the handle on a jack-in-the-box, walking towards the end of the world, knowing that at any second, the ground was going to fall away. Of course, many interpretations to this, again, but if we look through it with the lens of family dysfunction, it may be able to hint at being a jack-in-the-box as being a reactor rather than an actor, because we react to the environment, react to the handle being spun on us and how we're expected to behave, knowing that at any second the ground was going to fall away, knowing that at any second chaos would erupt. Even if we played our part, hell could break loose in such a household. And as a small child, there's nothing you could really do about this. Like, these are your caretakers, these are your parents. How would you, like, you would have had to behave in a certain way just to protect yourself. These are survival mechanisms that one develops and armors oneself with. And it's our task as individual actors to undo the layers of one's onion, to figure out how to become our own actors and no longer play a jack-in-the-box. And Oliver now is fully broken away. He's unchained, unshackled, and no longer a simple jack-in-the-box. No, he has entered his Jungian individuation phase, his integration, his becoming a whole person, no longer a half in need of another half. No, an individual as a whole. And then we get into the juicy red curtain breakfast scene, where Felix's body is rolled past the window as they have breakfast, and still just to stay in denial, really. And this is really where the family dynamic reaches a boiling point. Again, many interpretations to this. To me, through the lens of family dysfunction, this looks like a blood boiling point. The curtains are closed so that you just don't have to look at it. And Elspeth is in extreme denial, and they're talking about the party and how it was the night before and the cake. And Sir James is trying to hold down his own emotions. You can kind of see him fuming, and nothing is really being talked about. Venetia and Farley are breaking down, and Farley finally reaches his breaking point and says, this is insanity. This is madness. How can we sit here and act as if nothing is happening? How are we pretending to this degree? Would you please excuse me? But he breaks one of the rules. I've mentioned one rule, and that was don't talk, but there are 3 rules that usually hang around these families. It's don't talk, don't feel, and don't trust. He's starting to feel his emotions, and he's starting to talk about it. And this triggers Sir James. Sir James then explodes onto Farley and says, sit down, eat the damn pie, eat the pie, eat the fucking pie. I don't want to hear and see your American emotions. And what it does is Sir James is projecting his own emotions and that he can't express them onto Farley. If one cannot have the emotions, everybody else around them can't have them either. This is how the family operates. There's usually a hierarchy. Sir James being very high on the hierarchy and people walking on eggshells around them. That's how this orbiting system works. But Farley has reached his breaking point and is trying to, he can't pretend no longer. He's expressing them, but it's being shut down. And this is why this looks like such a juicy boiling point. And then you see Elspeth is like, what's going on? What's happening? Still in just full on denial. And Oliver is eating this up. He is loving it. He says, this is so delicious. Thank you. Because he's not bound to his role anymore. No, he is playing it willfully with some joy. And you can kind of tell that he's not breaking the rules, right? And everybody kind of just looking at him like, why? Can you please shut up? Like, we're in pain right here. But he is now playing their strings. Of course, he really killed their light source and the glue to the family, but he is no longer bound. He's no longer stuck. No, the tables have turned. They are stuck. He's playing their strings. They're wound up in the box. Let's take a look at the diagram and where we are. So Oliver has passed the grand trials and is into the phase of discarding his old self and accepting the new role. Now, it is not as cut and dry as this because old parts of oneself will linger for quite a while. It's a shedding of a new skin, and this is depicted in the bathtub scene where when he runs into Venetia in the bathtub and he's kind of startled and apologizes and says sorry, she says, your politeness is so grating. His old self is still there. Now, there's another part of this diagram, or shown in other versions of this hero's journey, where it's a refusal to return. And this is very well depicted with the scene where he meets Sir James and he asks Oliver, like, I think it's time for you to leave. Like, do you mind getting out of my house? I really need you to go, my dog. It's been fun, but everybody's dying here, and I think you're the main source of this all. Then he whips out a checkbook, but Oliver's no longer a reactor. He doesn't just blindly accept. He actually starts to ask questions like, why, Sir James? I think it's actually better for me to stay. Like, Elspeth is not in her right mind, and she needs a yes man, and I can offer her that service. But no, he's he wants this dude out. He really wants this dude out, and asks, how much fucking money do you want for me to get you out of this house? But why, Sir James? He does eventually leave, and he returns to the ordinary world, where now Oliver is a new Oliver. He is a master of both worlds. He has individuated. Now, I have obviously skipped many parts of this movie. There was just too much to talk about. But when we skip to the murder on the dance floor scene, where well-hung Oliver is dancing through the hallways of his newly acquired and conquered Saltburn estate, we get a sense of resolution. He is fully transformed into the master of puppets. He is now a puppet master. He has played the cat and family game by their rules and fully consumed them. He is not this timid boy who got his first tour of the estate. No, he is a new person, a master of both worlds. And it's kind of a twisted villain arc, right? Like, he does some horrible things in this movie. He murders people, he lies, manipulates, and it's almost like a Joker type of movie. But as Emerald Fennell said, by the end of the movie, you may side with Oliver. And to me, I certainly did. But if you can relate to any of the personalities or characters, even to a small degree in this movie, and maybe you can even relate to the household, right? Maybe you know or are starting to understand that you come from a family of dysfunction. Please be patient with yourself. Have grace. A lot of people deal with this. You are not alone. And understand that there's no 2.5-hour resolution. This is just a movie, and they have to pack the extremes into that short amount of time. It is art. And it will also not be this extreme in real life. Yes, the boundary setting will be a little icky and messy, but I see you, I love you, and please have patience with yourself. There are many resources you can pull from, and people are more than willing to help. There are many groups, there are therapists, there are self-healing circles, you name it. This is a big thing. Now, for other people who, cannot relate to this, again, God bless you. You did not have to put up with this. And if you stuck with me to the end of this review, thank you so much. I would love to know what you think. Am I a complete loony? Did we hit the mark or miss the mark? Should I be put into a bin with other loonies? Let me know. And then, as promised, what I'd like to do now is go over the laundry list. And this will really tie things together in the movie through the lens of family dysfunction. And so we get to the list. Now, this is one of those things where if you check more than 5 to 7 things off of this list, you may want to look into this further. So, these are characteristics that we seem to have in common due to being brought up in an alcoholic or dysfunctional household. 1. We became isolated and afraid of people and authority figures. Oliver is called a bootlicker early in the movie, and that resembles this fear of authority. To bow down to authority is easier. 2, we became approval seekers and lost our identity in the process. Now, Oliver was everything to everybody else to please them except himself. He did not have a strong sense of self-worth until the end of the movie. 3, we became frightened by angry people and any personal criticism, shown by Farley once he does lose his crap and can't hold it in anymore, and then Sir James unleashes his rage on him, and he sits back down, cries, and eats the pie. 4, we either became alcoholics, married them, or both, or found another compulsive personality such as a workaholic to fulfill our sick abandonment needs. 5, we live life from the viewpoint of victims and are attracted by that weakness in our love and friendship relationships. 6, we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, and it is easier for us to be concerned with others rather than ourselves. This enables us not to look too closely at our own faults. Example, Oliver giving away his bicycle to a complete stranger, seeming stranger, and then giving the blanket off of his naked body to Venetia, even though he's standing there shivering in the cold. 7, we get guilt feelings when we stand up for ourselves instead of giving in to others, shown by him returning the eggs and feeling very guilty about it. He set a boundary, but he says, sorry. Where do we leave off? 8, we became addicted to excitement. Now, this is riddled throughout the movie. Almost all of these characters are masochists. 9, we confuse love and pity and tend to love those people that we can pity and rescue. Elspeth and Felix are prime examples of this. 10, we have stuffed our feelings from our traumatic childhoods and have lost the ability to feel and express our feelings because it hurts so much. Denial. Extreme denial. One does not feel, one does not talk about it. 11, we judge ourselves harshly and have very low sense of self-esteem. 12, we are dependent personalities who are terrified of abandonment and will do anything to hold on to a relationship in order not to experience painful abandonment feelings, which we received from living with sick people who were never there emotionally for us. Oliver doing everything he can to hold on to Felix's relationship, lie, manipulate, the whole shebang. 13, alcoholism is a family disease, and we became para-alcoholics or codependent and took on the characteristics of that disease, even though we did not necessarily pick up the drink. And 14, para-alcoholics are reactors rather than actors. Puppets in a box. That's where we wrap it up. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a comment, and then I shall talk to you later. Take care of yourself.